this meeting to order. Welcome to the Standing Committee on Official Languages. Pursuant to the Standing Order 1083 and the motion adopted by the committee on September 20th, 2023, the committee will be briefed by the Official Languages Minister on its mandate and priorities. I will read some of the guidelines for those who are not usually at this committee. However, if you speak and you put the earpiece close to the microphone, then it can be dangerous for our interpreters, so please be careful. I would like to welcome the Honorable Randy Boissonnault, the Minister, accompanied by Deputy Minister and Julie Boyer. They are used to coming here, and we are happy to see them. You have 5 minutes, Minister, and I'm very strict on time because we only have 1 hour. I'd like everyone to have a chance to speak. For the members, I will be very strict on time, and I will cut you off when your time is up. Chop, chop. As some people are quite used to this. So, Mr. Boissonnault, on to you for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. First, I would like to highlight the fact that we are on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe, and I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for having invited me here today. I am accompanied by Isabelle Mondieu, Deputy Minister, and Julie Boyer, also Assistant Deputy Minister. The last time I was here, I was telling Bernard I had hair, or at least it looked like I had hair in 2015. I haven't said anything about you, dear friend, but I would say that my haircut has definitely changed.
Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Official Languages. Mais vous me connaissez de longue date de mes autres rôles en Parlement.
You've known me for a long time, whether it was as Parliamentary Secretary for Ms. Jolie or in the other functions I have occupied on the Hill. I support our minority communities, language communities.
And I can tell you that I've had the opportunity to highlight this committee's excellent work already. Et j'aimerais vous remercier du fond du cœur pour avoir.
I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for having developed and approved C13. It's been 50 years, or it's taken 50 years to update it, so congratulations to each and every one of you. That said, the implementation on June 20th of the Act of Substantive Equality of Canada's official languages is a major step forward. The modernization of the law responds to issues and realities that I see regularly at home in Edmonton. I myself belong to an official language minority community, and that is part of who I am. I deeply believe that what's happening in Alberta's francophonies, or our challenges, our successes, the defense of our rights, can be useful to the entire Canadian francophonie and to the promotion of official languages across the country.
The Modernized Act will allow us to support French language across Canada, including Quebec, and defend official language minority communities. And as you already know, the Modernized Act inside out, I'm going to highlight just a few aspects that I feel are particularly important. En premier lieu, l'appui pour l'éducation.
First of all, support for education from early childhood to the post-secondary level. Interpretation doesn't seem to be working. Just a moment, I will pause your time, Mr. Minister. I will speak in both languages. Inaudible for the interpreter. Just a moment, Mr. Minister. Of course, I'm not... This is out of my purview, but I think you are speaking a little bit too quickly. For the interpreters. Oh, I'm so very sorry to the interpreters. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. Everything's going very well. So I am, of course, very thrilled that you are studying this issue. With regards to Francophone immigration, which is essential to help restore the demographic weight of Francophones in minority communities, and the new obligations for all federal institutions to take positive measures in favor of official languages. Also, the strengthening Part 7 of the Act has been well received by stakeholders. I will be working closely with the President of the Treasury Board to develop the regulations provided for in the Act. Just a reminder, during the summer of 2017, I conducted consultations in 17 cities across Canada as part of our 2018-2023 2028 action plan. I think that this is a particularly important issue. I think I have about a minute left, Mr. Chair. I'd like to... How do I put this? I will be defending official languages coast to coast, and I'm here to defend Francophones in the west of the country and Anglophones in Quebec. $4.1 billion is a lot of money for the action plan. I am deeply attached to both of our official languages. When I was 15, I came here for the Young Canadians Forum. I was 15 years old, and I was unable to speak to half of the delegates. I was so stunned by this that when I went back home, I said that I have to learn French. And when I was a parliamentary guide, I actually failed the exam because I didn't know what the word for surgery was in French. Eventually, I passed the exam and got the position, and I started working here in 1990. I never could have thought that I would have become minister, and I'm here to tell you that the system does work, and I'm a product of that system. Thank you, Mr. Boissonneau. You still have 15 seconds left, but I would just like to say that I am also very proud to have three Francophones from Alberta here today at the committee. When I was young, I didn't think I'd ever see the day. I'm speaking of my colleagues, Mr. Dalton, Ms. Goodbridge, and Mr. Boissonneau. So for upcoming questions, there will be 6 minutes allocated to every party. I will make sure that everybody has time to ask questions. So we will be starting with the first co-chair of this committee, Mr. Joël Godin. 6 minutes. Hello, Mr. Boissonneau. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure for me to meet you here as a parliamentarian, asking questions to a minister. We, of course, as of now, don't have the same relationship as when we cross paths. And I'm hoping to get as many answers possible to my questions. First question. I don't mean to ruffle your feathers. It's not out of impoliteness. It's just for lack of time. Do you think that there is a declining of French in Canada? Absolutely. Do you think that French is declining in Quebec? Yes. Now, Mr. Minister, the decline of French is something you just admitted to. That is a step in the right direction. What will you do, or what do you have planned? Here's what I'm observing. In C13, there are many elements and specific clauses that are not being applied. I'll explain. You said that indeed there is a decline of French in Quebec and in Canada. That to me means that we have to act urgently. Mr. Minister, you said in your opening remarks that immigration is essential. The clause in the Act, is that being implemented currently? Let's take 15 seconds just to contextualize. We have more Francophones and people speaking French in Quebec, but the demographic weight has shifted. That is why the Prime Minister and other ministers have indicated clearly that French is declining in Quebec, and we are observing this across the country. I just wanted to contextualize. And what about immigration? With regards to immigration, things are very clear. When the bill was implemented, we were called to act on the Demographic Act in 1971. That is our jurisdiction. I will cut you off. C-13 is the clause on immigration being applied now that that act is been adopted. That has to be applied by decree, and that is the work that Minister Miller is doing. Thank you for your answer. Mr. Minister, I'd like to know how things are going. You are official languages minister. As a parliamentarian, if I have an issue with an organization, who do I turn to? Treasury Board, Canadian Heritage, or the official languages minister? What if I want to make sure that the organizations hear our grievances? I think it's the official languages minister who should receive this. What do you think? This committee asked that the responsibilities with regards to the new act be anchored in a central agency. You've succeeded in shifting this responsibility to the Minister of the Treasury Board. She will take care of these issues. The answer to your question, dear Mr. Godin, is it depends on what organization. Are you talking about Radio-Canada? Are you talking about the RCMP who made a huge faux pas? Are you talking about a private organization? I'm talking about within a minister, for example. With regards to the Canadian Armed Forces, if there is a gap in the system, as a parliamentarian, who do I turn to? I think you can go to Minister Anand. I think you can go to the Commissioner. But you should go to the minister who is responsible for this situation. Inaudible for the interpreter. I'm going to cut you off. You're saying that I have to pick the right minister, and that's why we asked for a central agency. One department should be responsible so that we have a single point of contact that controls how the act is applied. And you have that with the Minister of the Treasury Board. Let me ask you a question. With regards to the ministers, who will make the Council of Ministers, who will make sure that the decree is applied? Well, that is Minister Miller's responsibility, first and foremost. I'll continue. The Commissioner, the official languages Commissioner, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the sanctions that are under his purview, well, those have been increased, but they are not applicable. When will those come into effect? That's a very good question. I have a lot of good questions, and time is flying by. I will meet the new commissioner. Well, I want to know, the government, who will stand up and say we have to table this decree so that it is implemented? I have to do that. When will you do that? There are 5 steps to take. First, there are consultations, inaudible for the interpreter. So it's an emergency situation. There's decline, but you can't give me a date. Is that correct? Inaudible for the interpreter. What I'm saying is we have to do this work properly in the coming months, just for the benefit of interpreters. If you speak over one another, you cannot, it's impossible to follow the conversation. So one at a time, please. Mr. Minister. For those who have the rights, there was people around this table fought very hard to make sure that this was in the 2021 census. Sadly, the bill did not oblige us to include this in the census. How will you make sure that you will include those in the act? Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Godin, but your time is up. Mr. Drouin, 6 minutes. Thank you. I will be sharing my time with my colleague, Ms. Kayabaga. Mr. Godin mentioned the commissioner, but I want to disidentify myself with Mr. Fraser, the former minister, for what he wrote and shared in the media. I completely disagree with him, and I want to specify that this committee, and anybody who is implicated in defending the Francophonie has a duty to inform themselves before speaking out. Now, to the minister, you are the author of the term Franco-curious. You did consultations in 17 municipalities, and one of them, the most beautiful one, is my riding. And I thank you for having visited us for that consultation. You mentioned that the RCMP's commissioner's comments were completely unacceptable. There is an official languages policy that requires that our top officials be bilingual, whether it's in the RCMP or in the armed forces. As official languages minister, what will you do to fix this completely unacceptable situation? As I said, I think that this is the kind of thing, work that I need to share with Minister Anand. She is also responsible of this. I answered a similar question to that Mr. Beaulieu asked in the House, and I will give you the same answer. There are positions that are clearly indicated as being bilingual, and we have to make sure that public service make sure that that's respected. There will be training, and I believe $20 million will be allocated to a center that will modernize the act that will be at within the Treasury Board. That is a gain that the act brought on. Perhaps we need to also ask what are the roles. I'll be very clear. I am the person who is leading the orchestra, and I have to make sure that everything is harmonious. And Ms. Anand has to make sure that the musicians are working well together, if you will. Thank you. I appreciate your comments, and I will pass the mic to Ms. Kayabaga. Hello, Minister, and welcome to our committee, and congratulations for your new role. Earlier, we talked about Francophone immigration. You are not the immigration minister, but you likely have some influence on Francophone immigration. If I'm not mistaken, last year, we reached a 4.4%, but a lot of communities want to see that percentage yet increased for Francophone immigration because French is still in decline in Canada. Do you think that this is something that you can influence or that you can talk to the immigration minister about so that we can reach our goals and increase Francophone immigration across Canada? Great question. If the Albertan Francophonie has changed over the last 15 years, it's because of Francophone immigration. I must thank this committee because I remember debates we've had over the years. At the time, it was very difficult to get Immigration Canada to budge above 1.5%. So now we are getting rates that we've never seen before. If we can reach an agreement and be more collaborative have more collaboration between Quebec and Canada, that would be fantastic. The work you've done as parliamentarians and as a government is the reason why we have $137 million for this action plan, which includes a $25 million immigration center and more money to strengthen the path of Francophones once they get here. That means Edmonton, the North, and so on. That means that we are very serious with regards to immigration. Of course, we have targets, and that's Minister Miller's responsibility, but we are in agreement on that, and we will make sure to continue to have targets that we can actually reach.
Avec 45 secondes.
Thank you. For the 5 seconds remaining, you can maybe talk in the following rounds about your action plan. Thank you, Minister. Just to underline one thing, Ms. Kayabaga visited Edmonton, and it makes a difference when you have Francophone, Francophile, Franco-curious MPs who travel across the country. And if we can have more people traveling in Quebec, outside of Quebec, to talk about official languages, I think that will be a gain for our linguistic duality. Thank you, Mr. Boissonnault. Next speaker, our second vice chair of this committee, Mr. Beaulieu. You will have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Minister, according to the 2021 census, the proportion of Quebec residents speaking primarily French at home went from 69% to 67%. Do you think that that points to a decline in French in terms of French presence? I think, Mr. Beaulieu, we agreed on the numbers. The numbers come from Statistics Canada. There are also more allophones in Quebec who speak other languages at home. But do you agree that these are the actual numbers? Yes, they are, and we'd be happy to share more numbers, but the demographic weight has changed in Quebec and across the country. We have more French-speaking people in Quebec, but the demographic weight is in decline. How do you explain that the Minister of Immigration doesn't recognize the situation? They just recognize the decline in terms of mother tongue, and Bloc Québécois presented a motion in the chamber 2 days ago. We presented the data from Statistics Canada, and the Liberals objected to that. I think we should allow the minister to speak for himself. But when we look at the numbers, of course, the aim is to protect official languages across the country. We'd like to have a beautiful francophonie in the Canadian West, and we have to protect language rights and social rights of Anglophones in Quebec. Well, since the introduction of the Official Languages Act, it's been 53 years. $3.5 billion have been spent to support English in Quebec. So the majority of the tax money collected in Quebec is actually serving to support English in the only francophone province. Is this going to be the course going forward? Mr. Beaulieu, one thing to underline is the following. Of course, we have to protect French speakers and francophones inside and outside Quebec. And you have an incredible Franco-dominant culture and presence in Quebec that has to be preserved and protected. When you look at the money in the action plan for Anglophones, let's talk about the real numbers. 40% of the money that's been earmarked for Anglophones is actually to francisize them so that they have better opportunities on the labor market. And I'm the Minister of Employment and Workforce Development as well. And I think we will all agree that for a strong Quebec, we need people who are well-trained, who speak French on the marketplace. Well, we can look into those numbers because we are talking about 6% of the budget, but you refer to 40%. But when we looked at the Official Languages Action Plan, there are Anglophone organizations in Quebec who have been consulted, who will be financed. And this will, of course, it will be possible to verify these numbers. But in this 40%, do you have anything that will go towards protecting French in Quebec? Well, allow me to answer the question based on the number of $137 million that will go to Quebec. About 50% will help Anglophones to francisize, to have better opportunities on the marketplace, in the labor force. When it comes to the declining demographic weight, our government is very open to having this discussion with our Quebec counterparts. While you refer to 40% of the $137 million of new money, so the official languages budget in Quebec will be about $150 million per year. So 40% of this number will go towards promoting French. Not at the moment, because the action plans and the official languages responsibility, if you will. Here, there's no financing, but as I was saying, our government is open to the idea, and we're trying to see how we can work together with Quebec to reverse the declining demographic weight. Well, 60% of the new money will help to promote English. And when you look at the entirety of the budget, there's no specific number, but it's French that is menaced, that's under threat in Quebec, not English. So it doesn't make sense. So this financing, this support to English by the federal government is justified by saying that You finance it, you support it, so language minorities are supported on a province-by-province basis. But the Human Rights Committee stated that Anglophones in Quebec cannot invoke minority rights because they are part of the Canadian majority. So a majority within a province can claim minority rights if they are in a minority situation across Canada. Well, I said very clearly that French is in decline, and French in North America, French-speaking populations are a minority. That's very clear. That's also accepted by the UN. But Mr. Beaulieu, when I meet with different groups, Anglophone groups in Quebec, they say that they just want to live their lives, not just in English, but they are some of the most bilingual people in the country. And they just want to know that their rights are being respected by the different institutions, and that's where I have a role as the Minister of Official Languages. Well, you're referring to services in English for Anglophones, but where we don't really agree that much is... Thank you, Mr. Beaulieu. Thank you very much. I know, but I will have to be strict with our timing. Okay. Up next, coming closer to Alberta, going to beautiful Manitoba, Mrs. Ashton, you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you very much. My first question, Mr. Minister, will be about education in general, but more specifically, the labor shortage that we see in childcare services. Faced with the shortage in Ontario, for instance, of Francophone professionals, the AFCO testified to that, and we know that Franco-Ontarians will not be able to have access to these services, preschool services. What kinds of measures does the government think about implementing to improve this, the presence of these professionals, to improve training conditions and working conditions, and to attract new professionals to this industry? Thank you, MP Ashton, for this very good question. It is a concern for our government. Our early childhood plan should, of course, apply across Canada. That was part of the first round of negotiations with the provinces. My colleague, ministers, have also agreed on the fact that we have to increase the number of trainings that are available. And when you look at the action plan, I think $14.2 million is the amount of money set aside to train people. We will have more childcare facilities for Francophones across Canada and Anglophones in Quebec. And it's also important to underline, very important, that these child care centers have the capacity. So we set aside $50 million to increase their capacity, the Francophone or in French child care services, preschool services. I have my colleagues who are in charge of the delivery of these services, but we are trying to make sure that people have access to their training and that they have job opportunities on the market. The capacity question is very important because the facilities we have are not sufficient. There aren't a sufficient number of spaces and not enough professionals. So, sticking to the same theme, we are looking at a shortage of 10,000 French-speaking, especially immersion teachers and trainers. And I'm a proud product of that system, but also education in French. How will you work with the provinces and territories to overcome the shortage of teachers, which is clearly a national crisis, in Francophone schools and immersion schools in Canada, to make sure that a high-quality French education can be provided across the country? Thank you once again for this question. I would have liked to stay in the system for longer than I did. But when it comes to answering this question, we have $16.3 million for French training courses to attract Francophone teachers and trainers. And last year, we set aside $170 million in the post-secondary education system. College Mathieu, Saint Boniface, and other institutions across Ontario, College Saint-Jean, and others will hopefully be able to train the next generation of trainers and teachers who can go into the Francophone system or immersion system. This is critical. And at the time, Ms. Joly and I was there as her parliamentary secretary. We were pressed by this committee to set aside the necessary money. And now we have that money. And we should also be in contact with our provincial counterparts when dealing with these issues, because they are also involved in shaping these programs, education programs, and that has a lot of impact on the training of future teachers and professionals. I do understand the importance of your question, Ms. Ashton, and we are aware of the issue, and we're putting the money on the table to help with the shortage. Well, let's talk about labor shortage a bit more. Many trainers or teachers have arrived at our country as immigrants, Francophone immigrants, over the past couple of years, and we have talked a lot about this when we were doing our Francophone immigration study recently. Would you be open to the creation of new pools that would target specifically Francophone teachers as an immigration pathway to rectify this labor shortage situation? And the Canadian Immersion Professionals Association had a study on this in 2021. Yes, we are actually doing that as we speak. Francophone teachers stream is what we have established. We are inviting them to come to Canada to settle here and to train our youth in French. We are very proud about this program. We have 16 million set aside for that, and if more money is needed, dear colleagues, you know how that goes. 15 seconds. Well, we are looking forward to how that program will progress, and I will ask more questions later on. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ashton. Now we're going to Alberta. Mr. Dalton, you will have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you very much, and congratulations, Minister, for your new role.
At Collège Saint-Jean, Université Saint-Jean, my father attended there in the 1940s and then got sisters and family, so lots of connections there. But so going back, I know you addressed it a bit. As far as the mandate letters, I mean, you were appointed in July, and they're still not out. Now we're hearing, well, this is just a continuation of before. I think you've mentioned that, but to me that reflects a lack of I don't know, organization, energy, vision of the government, of the Prime Minister. So it's a little disappointing, and I would think that influenced you too, because we're here to actually, one of the reasons we're here is to hear about your mandate. So maybe, can you comment on that, please?
So, look, I will say this very clearly. I don't write mandate letters. I receive them. And I have a very clear mandate letter from the mandate from my predecessor, who was a very clear mandate letter, colleagues. It's to get C-13 passed and then to implement it. And that's it. That's the job. And I said it in French earlier, like, I'm the conductor of the orchestra here. So I want to make sure that we got everybody on the stage, that they're playing the music we want to hear, that we're dealing with the issues we have to deal with. And we had a big win in this modernization of the official languages because we have the president of the Treasury Board responsible for Part 7 now. All right. So you don't have the mandate letter, but we'll go back to the mandate letter from the previous minister, Madame So it is this. Let's be clear. It's the same mandate. Well, that's good. So what was the first priority in that mandate letter? Pass C-13 and implement this, and implement it should it be passed. No, actually, the first point was to pass in full the white paper. And so the white paper, the number one point of the and concern expressed by the Francophone community that we voted on was the fragmentation of power. That the official languages is dispersed. You have a piece of it. The Heritage Ministry, Treasury Board, and we're saying it needs to be under one minister, under Treasury Board. So that was number one priority, and we don't see that. And you weren't. I don't even know if you're aware of that. Well, I'm totally aware of it, and I think what I meant to say with my question was you achieve that with the concentration of powers with the president of the Treasury Board having responsibility for the implementation of this act across government. I mean, that is something that this committee has been fighting for and that the communities have been fighting for since I was first elected in 2015. So I think this committee can be very proud of that. I think there are always things in an act, a modernization that takes 50 years to achieve that may not be scoped in. But in this case, this is a big win, and I know you're going to see Madame Anand, Minister Anand. I think it's November 9th or 8th, and you'll be able to ask her these questions. But we got the win, colleagues. This
Thank
is
you,
now
Mr.
in the Treasury Board.
So yes, the fragmentation is a concern, and it still is there. The Conservatives put forth amendments to put the authority within the one minister, and that was voted down in spite of the white paper's recommendation. So just given what you said also here about different ministers, would you not agree that about the importance to have the Minister of Heritage to come before this committee?
Colleagues, that's entirely in your scope as colleagues, but there's no hierarchy in the ministries. So let me give you an example. I have a line responsibility in Employment Social Development Canada and 5 other ministers that I work with in this file, but I don't have any senior role or authority over those other ministers, and it's the same when we look at Langues Officielles, Patrimoine Canada, and sport. Like, ministers are equal in this administration, and so there's no reason for you to talk to Minister Saint-Onge about Langues Officielles, because guess what, colleagues? I sign the checks. And I make the decisions, and it will be my team that will be putting all of the stages of the rules through Parliament to get them done.
Thank you, Minister. And so, I mean, that just is a bit more challenging for us as a committee as far as representing second language minority rights, having it so fragmented. Just another question here. I'll just leave this to you. I'm interested in your comments.
Sure.
And that is the situation in Quebec with the out-of-province English-speaking students. So the fees doubling. So just wondering if you could comment on that, please.
So let me just clarify.
15 seconds.
Fragmentation is very different than having every single minister of the Crown responsible for implementing their responsibilities under the Act. And as it concerns the situation in Quebec, they have the rights on the ground over universities. That's their champ de compétence. But I think universities should be windows open to the world and not closed.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Dalton, I said you're Alberta, but you're from BC. Your roots are in Alberta, but sorry, I said...
Famille militaire.
Exactement. So, from BC, now, nous en allons vers la Nouvelle-Écosse. Monsieur Sanson, à vous la parole.
Now we're going to Nova Scotia. Mr. Sanson, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Well, I will be sharing my time with Mr. Iacono. I will just address a point made by Mr. Dalton. If the amendment that has to do with the Treasury Board was a Conservative amendment, I think they would have voted in favor. So, Minister, we are proud to have you here with us. Also very proud that you got the position. We have been working together since 2015, of course, with the same objective in mind. And now we have the tools to go ahead and realize many things that caused issues in the past. There are Acadians as well. We should not forget them in New Brunswick and elsewhere. My question will be a very short one. I don't want to steal a lot of time from my friend. In terms of learning and developing competencies in a minority setting, renewing agreements is very important. Have you made progress on that file?
Well said. And of course, I worked in early childhood sector before I became a parliamentarian for about a decade. And I know how important it is, as I said earlier. I know Mona Odette very well. We call her Monatoba because she represents her province so well. I'm very interested by her request for funding, and I've asked Deputy Minister Thompson to talk to Ms. Odette. They have talked, and we will continue to monitor that very closely. Thank you, dear colleague, and welcome, Minister congratulations very much. In your action plan, you talked about 4 points that will be worked on over 5 years. Can you elaborate? If I just refer to the biggest points, the second annex, we're talking about $700 million. Supporting second language learning, more than 400 million. And next page, the new sums in the system. We talked about integration, $50 million. Supporting teaching for minority communities, $147. There a lot of money. There are organizations that have been asking for money for years, $62.5 million to them. So that is $1.4 billion total. So this government has allocated historic sums to this. These are excellent numbers. I'm very happy. Where are you with regards to certain points in the Act? Good question, Mr. Chair. How much time do I have left? I've been learning a lot of things as a minister. You just presented a number of things to me. There are 5 steps ahead. There is the pre-consultation amongst stakeholders. Then we have to elaborate on those. The second step is a consultation, then table it at the House of Commons, and then publish it in the Gazette, and then I have to go to the Cabinet to have a final support. And then once that is approved, we have to table it as a decree, but we also have to agree with the applicability of the regime of the plan in Quebec and how it works with the charter. So we've done some of the work. I'm waiting to meet with the commissioner, and we're already on our way. This explains why you can't specify when this will happen, what date will happen, because there are many different stakeholders involved. Less than 10 seconds left. Thank you very much. Thank you for your discipline, friends. On to Mr. Beaulieu for 2.5 minutes. Thank you. Very quickly. Back to what you said. 40% of 150 million is 11 million. If there aren't more sums allocated to French, that's about 7.5% for French over 5 years. Will there be more money allocated to supporting French in Quebec? That will require more conversations with the government of Quebec and Minister Roberge. I also talked to Minister Girard, who is responsible for the Anglophone communities in Quebec. He is very happy with the $40 million that will be allocated to supporting Francophones and the workforce. Well, we don't know where that money is going to go necessarily. Can we get that data? In the past, Heritage Canada would never give us the answer. Will we know what that money will go to? Absolutely. And I have these documents with annexes which are public, and you can read them. Next question. Do you think that it is legitimate for Quebec to want to integrate 90% of new immigrants in order to maintain its demographic weight? It is in Quebec's right to francisize new immigrants. I shared a story about that. I think that it is legitimate because of Quebec's context. If new immigrants want to work in Quebec, then it is critical and essential that they integrate. You've talked about a new indicator, and you've mentioned that there 33% of immigrants in Quebec are included. What we're asking for is for services in English for 33% of immigrants in Quebec. That can be up to 40%. And what we want is for French to be the common language. So we have to Francicize 90% of the new immigrants if we want to maintain the demographic weight. Isn't that an issue? As you know, Quebec is responsible for whatever touches on immigration in Quebec. That is final. On to Ms. Ashton for 2.5 minutes. Thank you. The action plan came into effect last spring. However, the funds have not been allocated to the organizations yet. Will the funds be distributed at the beginning of 2024? Thank you, Ms. Ashton. Beginning of 2024 is a bit ambitious, but in 2024 is what will happen. We have an action plan. We have a budget. We have to pass by the Treasury Board. We have to elaborate the plan. We have to do a call to tender. It's not a question of weeks, but months. And I know that I have asked all of our communities, Acadians, Francophones, Anglophones in Quebec, to be quite patient. I know how badly these communities need the money. With regards to the most important agreements, with regards to services, for example, for OLMCs, that takes a bit more time because that requires bilateral agreements with all of the provinces, and that process has already begun. And in you act, you said that you have until June 2024 to adopt a policy on immigration, or on Francophone immigration, in order to ensure that there is a fair demographic weight outside of Quebec. When will you reveal your results? That is something that Minister Miller and I are working on. We will be meeting next week to talk about immigration targets. We want to increase the demographic weight, or rebuild it rather, across the country. We will do that before the deadline that is included in the Act. Another point or question: how does Heritage Canada want to fix the issue of not receiving funds on time close to the deadline date, which is March 31st? I will push them to do so. That's all. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Ms. Ashton. Back to Alberta. Ms. Goodridge, 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Arsenault. To begin, Radio-Canada is under Heritage Canada's purview. Can you, however, make a comment about the Parisian studio being subcontracted instead of a company in Canada? First of all, I'd just like to say that you were a fantastic student of mine in 2005, and one never would have thought that we'd be in the same room. The answer to your question is, this is Minister Saint-Onge's purview, and it is inexcusable what they did. I appreciate that. We have very little time, so my name is Layla Goodridge, not Godridge, and that was indeed in 2005. But yes, I was a student. But the reality is that your job is that of a conductor, and that you're not the main minister. So to preserve languages and OLMCs, every time, what you're saying is that we have to talk to 50 different ministers instead of one minister every time that there is an issue. When I was a parliamentarian, as secretary, and I worked with Minister Joly when she was heritage minister. At the time, everybody would send her all the issues that had to do with official languages. We indeed have to make sure that every minister takes charge of the relevant issues. You've made sure that these issues come to Ms. Anand. That is a central agency, and you've succeeded in that. I think that there will be some very important gains. Sorry, we have very little time.
The Act only gives authority to the Treasury Board over certain parts of the Act. Parts 4, 5, and 6, and subsection 41(5) of Part 7. So it does not completely concentrate it to the Treasury Board. This is a space where, frankly, it is not the golden goose that you claim it is. This is not what we were asking for.
Well, I think the people in this room voted for the motion, and I haven't checked the voting record, but I know that the law passed Parliament, and there was robust conversation over the course of a year. And I remember when I was parliamentary secretary, the cry, the cri de cœur des communautés francophones qui voulaient avoir une
Francophone communities really spoke out about wanting all of these organizations to come together.
And I'm always going to, and the future ministers of official languages are going to make sure that every single one of our ministerial colleagues is responsible for respecting the Act and the law and making sure that all minority communities have access to their rights and to the benefits that come from the great action plan that we put in place.
So effectively, you're saying that we should continue to invite every single minister from all across government to come to this committee because every single one is the one responsible for official languages when it comes to their file and not you.
You are completely right. Every minister is responsible for official languages in their ministry. Madame le Conseil de Trésor.
Thank you. No, that's wonderful. It's good to know because sometimes we have some consternation on this committee from members of the Liberal Party that are concerned about having us invite different ministers from every single different department. But here you are telling us that clearly we need to be inviting every minister to come because every single minister is responsible for this, not just one.
I think you might run out of time with studies if you invited every minister, but know that every minister has a responsibility to implement the Act, and the minister responsible for making sure that Part 7 is implemented across government with the implementation of the Act is the President of the Treasury Board.
20 seconds, Mrs. Goodrich.
Alors, juste pour retourner en
So, back to French. We know what happened with the RCMP and bilingualism. Do you have any thoughts? Bilingual positions must be filled by bilingual staff. Thank you. Mr. Boissonneau, you finished right on time. Mr. Serré for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are, of course, very proud of the work done by this committee on C13. There are 300 parliamentarians. Everybody in this committee also worked for C13. And so if it wasn't for official languages, I would not be here as an MP. My father was here in '69 and first voted in that direction. I'd like to talk to you about education, Mr. Minister. There's an issue with Francophone universities in minority situations. They're threatened. There are two important factors. The action plan needs to address how that will be tackled. And also in Ontario, the Conservative government on June 30th refused to the federal government's support to the University of Sudbury to offer French courses. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. We know that that is a provincial jurisdiction, but I'd still like to hear your thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Serré, and thank you for all of your work as Parliamentary Secretary for Ms. Petipa-Taylor, and thank you for remaining in your position. With regards to university and capital investments, is that we need agreements with the provinces. We saw that there had been drastic cuts made by Premier Kenney in one go, and there were that was for Francophone universities and not for the University of Calgary. We were so threatened by this that the Campus Saint-Jean could have closed. The Saint-Jean campus is important. In Ontario, I met with the Minister of the Treasury Board, Minister Mulroney. She heard me very clearly. We are very involved with regards to the University of Sudbury. She and I also talked about Francophone universities in Ontario, and they had some very difficult days during the pandemic, but I have high hopes that this university will keep working. For many universities in the Atlantic sector and the Maritimes, it's important for us to have bilingual universities and Francophone universities. Second question. With regards to Francophones across the country and rural areas and the importance of the action plan, there were consultations done in the 3 territories and 10 provinces last year. I'd like to hear your thoughts about the Atlantic, the north of Ontario, and the west of the country. With regards to minorities, $1 billion have been approved. That's been doubled since 2015. How will that improve the situation of Francophones in rural areas? That has to do with the middle class. For example, people settle down and move to big cities, but they also go to rural areas and smaller communities as well. And therefore, provinces need to make sure that services in French are available when the demographic weight is there. And of course, I have to make sure that this is implemented. A few weeks ago or last week, we did just announce for funds for Alberta for the development agencies. They're interesting projects, not funds. It's important to support Francophone entrepreneurs, and I want to make sure that that work continues through such organizations or other economic agencies across the country. 30 seconds. Mr. Minister, some Native communities have shared their thoughts with us. We have 170 different languages across Canada. So I'd like to know what the what your thoughts are. I will start in Cree. I would just like to say hello and you're welcome. And my name in Cree is Strong Eagle Man. And I say that because I can be a Francophone and still support Indigenous languages. And I still want us to preserve their languages, and it's important for us as Canadians.
Thank you very much, Mr. Serret. Thank you, Mr. Minister. That's all the time we had for this part of our meeting. Mr. Minister, Ms. Boyer, and Ms. Mondu, thank you for taking part in our meeting today. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank you all. You're the Minister of Official Languages, of course, and we can really hear your passion for official languages coming out loud and proud. So thank you very much for that. Now we are going to go in camera, so for that we are suspended.